Hello and welcome. My name is Tanya Johnson. I am a registered psychologist, registered play therapist, co founder of the Institute of Child Psychology, and mom to two beautiful girls. One is highly sensitive, one is not. In this video, we're going to be talking about sensitivity as temperament, the difference between our highly sensitive kiddos and those who are not highly sensitive, and then we're going to take a peek into the impact of environment on highly sensitive kids. Okay, take a minute to look at the small child on the piano. I want you to imagine that you are this child for a second. Imagine all of the colors around you, the smell of the paint, the feel of the piano bench, the feel of the notes on your fingers, the sounds that may be coming from the piano. I want you to imagine what it would feel like to be immersed in this environment for 2 minutes. What would it feel like for 2 hours? What about 24 hours? And what if this was your reality? For our highly sensitive children, who are born with a more highly sensitive nervous system, they feel and experience their worlds deeply. These children are incredible because they see the world from a very different perspective. Those feelings drive creativity. It helps them to understand others and themselves. But it also often feels very, very overwhelming, which results in many of the labels that we often see put on our highly sensitive children. If you are a parent of a highly sensitive kiddo, or you even just know a highly sensitive kiddo, you'll probably have heard things like, this kid is just aggressive, they're hyperactive, they're picky, they're unmotivated, kind of lazy, they're stubborn, distracted. Why are they so withdrawn, introverted, neurotic, or just so sensitive, said in a very specific way? What we don't often talk about is the gifts that come with high sensitivity. So, as mentioned, these children are highly empathetic, often highly creative, they're highly compassionate. Often they have a vocabulary that exceeds chronological age, where we go, whoa, where did this child get this from? They see and process their worlds very deeply, which often does lead to heightened feelings of worry, heightened behaviors, heightened reactions to their world. But when these children are in environments that nurture them, exquisite things happen. And we're going to talk about that. So we may be tempted to go, what's wrong with my kid? This child needs help. They need medication. They need a diagnosis. I want us all to reframe and to understand that sensitivity is a temperament. It's what we're born with. It's how we do things. When we talk about a temperament, we're often chatting about things like activity level. Is this a little busy bee who goes from morning to night? Or are they slower in their approach to life? Their level of adaptability. Are they flexible or rigid? Persistence. Do they give up easily? Or do they keep on at a task for a long time? Those are some of the things that fall under temperament. Sometimes we get a little bit confused. So, temperament is how we do things, it's how we come into the world, whereas personality is the what and the why that's developed over time. So, as we understand the elements of a sensitive temperament, these are some of the things that we often see. Very often, our children who are highly sensitive display a greater depth of processing of information. So, with this comes them thinking deeply about the movie they watched, the book they read, what they learned in school, about the conversation they had with the lady at the checkout counter, with the interaction that they had with dad yesterday. They're constantly thinking. They have more sensitive nervous systems, which means that often in stressful situations, in chaotic situations, in situations where there's a lot of noise and lots of sensory stimulation coming in, our kiddos often feel overwhelmed and we'll see a stress response from them. They're super aware of really subtle differences, a change in tone, change in facial expression, change in bodily language. My little one, who's highly sensitive, will sometimes say to me, Mom, what's wrong? Before I'm even aware that anything's wrong, she's picking up on something that's happening in my body language. They're often prone to more intense negative feelings and more intense positive feelings. This duality is something we're going to keep talking about. But they're often very, very, very happy or very sad. Or they're very, 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 very excited. Or they're very disappointed. Again, that deep feeling, deep expression of what's happening in their world. Just like they feel those feelings deeply, they also feel physical pain deeply. When they're sick, they're sick. When they get stung by a bee, it hurts. Feeling life deeply. Easily overwhelmed, we spoke about this. They really need time to recharge their battery. They need lots of time alone, time to read, time to be in their bedroom. They don't do well with lots of back to back to back activity. So, our kiddos who are not highly sensitive, we often refer to them as our dandelion kids. These kids will thrive anywhere. It doesn't matter where you plant them, what's happening with the sun, the rain, the soil, they're going to thrive. These kids make up about 29% of the population. And then we have our tulip kids, who are just somewhere in the middle. When they become stressed, they may become tulips or orchids, but they're just kind of in the middle somewhere. This makes up about 40% of the population. And then our orchids. Think about an orchid. In order for an orchid to thrive, they need just the right amount of nutrients in the soil, the right amount of sunlight, the right amount of water, just the right amount of wind, and then they absolutely blossom. They're gorgeous. But when one of those factors are not working, we see that our orchids tend to wither. It's the same as our highly sensitive kiddos. When all of the factors in their environment and within their relationships are working for them, these children are absolutely magnificent. That's when they're at their very best. But when something is not working, when a relationship is not working, when their environment is overwhelming, when it's not structured and soothing and predictable, often these children struggle, just like our orchids. There's tons of research that shows us that when our orchid children, when our highly sensitive children are in adverse environments, so environments that are not working for them, where there's high conflict, where there's a lot of stress, that these kids exhibit high emotional, behavioral, and mental health issues that follow them all the way through into adulthood. The flip side of that coin, however, is that when kids are in positive environments, and we can have had an environment where factors were not great, and then we put different things in place, we put therapy, we add extra supports, we see that these children absolutely blossom. The interesting thing that research shows is that our orchid children actually respond really, really well to therapeutic interventions, more so than our non highly sensitive kiddos. So if we're listening to this and we go, oh, I'm not sure if this is the right environment for this child, know that there is so much hope, because when we put in those supports, when we put in that structure, when we look at our own parenting styles, our orchids respond well, very, very well. So, what is the research saying exactly? High sensitivity is correlated in unfavorable conditions with depression, anxiety, alexithymia, internalizing issues, people feeling as if they have a lower level of subjective happiness and life satisfaction, poor stress management, higher perception of home stress, higher levels of fear, poor physical health, high instances of somatic illness, nightmares and vivid images, and with kids feeling as if they're more reactive, shy, and inhibited with their worlds. What about favorable conditions? In favorable conditions, there's a correlation with our highly sensitive kiddos performing better than their peers. They achieve better grades in school, have more constructive moral attitudes, higher levels of social competency, higher levels of self regulation, and a greater sense of security resulting from experiencing the love of their families. They also display increased social competence in interaction with positive parenting styles, a a high responsiveness to psychological interventions, and increased activation in major reward centers of the brain in response to positive stimulation. They also show heightened creativity and higher levels of awe, which enhance pleasure and meaning in life. And so, if you have a highly sensitive child and you're struggling, start with relationship first. Think about the ways that your child experiences love from you. Look at the relationships that your child has at school and advocate for them. Those relationships where they spend so many hours of their waking day are critically important. Have a look at the level of stress at home and how we can start to cut back on some of that stress. This may be the most important thing that you ever do for your child who is highly sensitive, that ingredient that is required in order for them to truly blossom. If you want to find out more, we have a whole course on highly sensitive children, which looks deeply at the school environment, the home environment, how to foster emotional wellness, how to lead our children, what to do when challenging situations arise, and then, importantly, how to advocate for our highly sensitive kids. And if you're not doing it yet, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and the Child Psych Podcast.